The story begins with a thunderous boom, as a man's fist crashed into the ground. The earth cracked under the sheer force of his punch, and the men surrounding him were sent flying, shattered by the impact. This man was known as the Fist King, a title given to the man who subjugated the Jianghu with his bare fists alone. He was called more often by that name than his real one, Fist King Dan Wuzing. Suddenly a sharp pain flared in his abdomen, where blood began to pour from a fresh wound. He realized he had been ambushed by a mysterious group. Looking up, he spotted two figures standing atop a cliff. Now it's just those two remaining, he thought. They looked skilled, very skilled. Where are they from, he wondered. A masked man began rushing toward him with killing intent. Wuzing glared at him, then shouted to the figure on the cliff, "Let me return your subordinate to you." He charged forward. As Wuzing moved in, the masked man called out desperately, referring to the one on the cliff as Sword Demon and asking for help. But before he could do anything more, Sword Demon sliced him in half without hesitation. Wuzing, stunned, thought. He cut down his own ally without blinking. He fights dirty. He noticed the symbol on Sword Demon's sword. That cruelty, that insignia. He narrowed his eyes. You're from the demonic faction, aren't you? Hearing his words, Sword Demon responded, "I'm impressed, Fist King. You've held out this long." He began stepping closer. Wuzing steadied himself. Taking a fighting stance, "I'm gonna kill you in just 10 attacks, he declared. Sword Demon scoffed. "How arrogant," he said, drawing his blade and lunging forward. "Let's see how long that arrogance lasts." Wuzing dodged the strike and instantly closed the gap. His fist, emanating a powerful energy, slammed into Sword Demon's stomach, causing him to cough up blood. "He's fast," Sword Demon thought, surprised. Wuzing followed up with a flurry of punches, but something was wrong. Strange, he thought. All my attacks are missing his weak points. It's like someone is restraining me. He then noticed strings glinting in the light, strings attached to his limbs being manipulated from above. The second figure on the cliff was controlling his movements. When did he? Before he could react, Sword Demon stabbed him in the stomach. Blood gushed from Wuzing's mouth. "This is the end of the Fist King's reign," Sword Demon said coldly, but to his shock, Wuzing's fist still gathered energy more powerful than before. His glowing eyes locked onto Sword Demon. Wuzing threw a punch with all his remaining might. Sword Demon barely dodged the blow by sheer chance. The attack tore through the battlefield, carving a crater and leaving a trail of devastation. A cut appeared on Sword Demon's face. That blow, Sword Demon praises Fist King. A woman approached him and said, "That could have been dangerous," he replied. "Thanks to a certain someone, I'm still standing." Then he goes toward Wuzing's fallen body and prodded him with his finger. "Hey, Fist King, if you're gonna die, you should just..." He couldn't finish his sentence. A powerful uppercut landed under his chin. Wuzing, with fading strength, whispered, "That's the 10th attack." As he collapsed, he thought, "My strength, it's leaving me. I guess this is the end of my life as the Fist King. I only wish I could have hit him one more time." Dan Wuzing, the Fist King, died at the hands of the demonic faction, but just then a massive blue light struck the courtyard at the Jinhua Mountain safe house. A woman stood beside a man lying unconscious in bed. Slowly he opened his eyes to the sound of her voice calling out, "Master." The man was Dan Wuzing. As his vision cleared, he saw a woman standing beside him. She asked gently, "Are you all right?" He blinked in confusion. "Where am I? Did someone treat me?" he thought. The woman moved closer, her concern evident. "I don't have any injuries," he realized. She referred to him as First Young Master and asked if he wanted some water. He nodded and she handed him a cup, but as he drank, Wuzing was startled. "Why is she calling me First Young Master?" He turned to look into the mirror beside the bed and was shocked. The face staring back was strange and ugly. He spat out the water. "Who put a mask on me?" he thought, tugging at his face. But then he noticed there was no seam. "This isn't a mask." The maid grew scared at his erratic behavior and ran out of the room saying, "They'll get the physician." Wuzing tried to stop her, but she had already shut the door. Outside, the maid thought, "He's acting especially weird today." Inside, Wuzing stared into the mirror again. It couldn't have been the demonic faction, he thought. If they had this kind of power, they would have already taken control of Jianghu. Then who is this person? He struggled out of bed and dragged himself to a table nearby, each step agonizing. Sitting down, he muttered, "This body is absolute garbage." He spotted a book on the table. The title read Yunhe Merchant Group. "I've Heard of them, he thought, a large merchant group near Juhua Mountain. Must be pretty famous if I know about them even though I've never dealt with merchants. He looked at the letters scattered around. The name on the address was Li Jinian. There he got to know the owner of this body is Jinian eldest son. The contents of the letters revolved around money, gambling, and women. What a loser Jinian was. Wuzing thought. That's all I could gather from these. This isn't sorcery. Not a mask either. I don't feel any strange energy in me. He paused, eyes narrowing. Could I have reincarnated into Jinian's body? I must have lost my mind. Just then an old man burst into the room calling out, "First young master." The man Gong's son Myung, Jinian's physician, rushed to his side and grasped his wrist. "Are you all right, young master?" he asked, deeply concerned. Wuzing thought, "Who the hell is this?" Myung continued, "I was told something was off with you. You've no idea how worried I was," as he tried to check his pulse. Wuzing yanked his arm back. "I'm fine, you don't need to worry." Myung nodded. "I'm glad to hear that. I've prepared your usual meal." Two maids entered carrying a tray. Seeing the dish, Wuzing asked, "Chicken soup?" "Yes," Myung replied. "It's great for invigorating your body." Wuzing stared at the bowl. This rotten bastard, he thought. This chicken soup known as dragon and phoenix soup might be good for the healthy, but it's poison for someone as weak as Jinian. He even tried to check my pulse sneakily. He must notice something's different. Snake, Myung smiled, adding, "If you eat this regularly you'll be as strong as the youths in the Dragon Phoenix martial competition." That caught Wuzing's attention. How many years has the Dragon Phoenix martial competition been running now? "I'm not sure. I believe around 200. Wuzing waved him off. "I don't have much of an appetite. Leave the soup and go." Myung tried to protest, but Wuzing cut him off. "I want to sleep again. Don't wake me." He closed the door behind the physician. If the 200th competition is coming soon, Wuzing thought, it hasn't been long since I died. That means the demonic faction is still out there. And that snake of a physician, his expression darkened into a wicked grin. "Don't worry, you rotten bastards," he muttered. "This time I'm going to kill you all with just one punch." A few days later in Jinian's room, the maids were arranging food on the table. One of them muttered to the others, "He's eating this much again today. He used to only eat porridge." The maid beside her replied, "Yes, he eats with such an appetite now. It's about time he returns from his walk." Before she could finish her sentence, Wuzing entered the room. His body had completely changed. He was no longer the weak Jinian. He had fully adapted to Jinian's body. Upon seeing the maids, he said casually, "Well done, let's see what you've made." After dressing himself, he added, "Keep breakfast simple like this from now on." The maids nodded in response and began to leave the room. One of them whispered to the other, "It seems he's really gotten healthier." While Jinian was having his food, he heard a voice outside asking permission to enter. It was Myung. Jinian's expression immediately turned cold and frustrated. The sudden change in his face frightened the maids, who quickly scurried out of the room. Jinian called out, "Come in." Myung dashed past the maids into the room. Watching him, Jinian thought to himself, he's so rude. Myung greeted him with a bright smile which only made Jinian more suspicious. "I still don't understand why he grovels before me," he thought. Gazing at Myung closely, he considered, "Shall I try catching this little rat?" He asked calmly, "What is it, Physician Myung?" Myung replied, feigning confusion, "What do you mean, sir?" He wore a false expression of worry and said, "I hadn't heard from you at all. I couldn't endure the loneliness, so I came." He stepped closer to Jinian, examining him carefully. After a moment he remarked, "By the way, your complexion looks completely different now. All the effort I put in feels meaningless." With a smirk, Jinian replied, "You mean trying to seduce me with dragon phoenix soup?" Myung was visibly shocked. "Sir, I think there's been a misunderstanding. The dragon phoenix soup is a nourishing tonic." Jinian cut him off with a calm tone. "Oh, really? I thought it was poison." Surprised and growing nervous, Myung said quickly, "I'm Gong's son, Myung, your personal physician, sir." He bowed before Jinian and continued, "If I'm not welcome here, then I'll take my leave." He turned to go, but Jinian called his name. "You came without being called for, and now you say you'll leave without being told to?" Jinian asked in a cold tone, "Are you the master here, or am I?" Myung froze, frightened by the words. He turned back and stood before Jinian again. Jinian suddenly smiled. "I'm just joking," he said. Then he added, I need to send a letter. Bring me the writing tools from the desk. Myung fetched the materials and sat in front of him. Jineon said, I'll dictate you write. Myung nodded obediently. Jineon began. Due to Sir Lee Jineon's severe illness, I must remain in the villa for some time since this life of mine is so stubbornly long. Please advise on what I should do next. Myung was startled by the words. Jineon looked at him with a blank expression and asked, why aren't you writing it down? Smiling awkwardly, Myung asked, Sir, what are you? Before he could finish his sentence, a chopstick flew past him with such force that it penetrated the wall beside him, leaving a scar on his neck. Myung was terrified. Jineon said in a low, threatening voice, Hey old man, I'm not the Lee Jineon of the past anymore. Terrified, Myung apologized and asked him, What on earth do you mean? Jineon replied, First of all, dragon phoenix soup. For healthy people it may be a tonic, but to someone as ill as me it's as good as poison. He narrowed his eyes. You, a physician, must know that. He watched closely as Myung's expression changed. Did you really think I wouldn't notice you checking my pulse in secret when I didn't die? He asked with irritation. And most importantly, you couldn't even hide your intent to kill me. Myung remained silent. You're clearly not acting alone, Jineon said coldly. Write down the name of the one who gave you orders in that letter. Myung's face, now cold and hard, asked, Why are you doing this, sir? How could you suspect a kind man like me? His expression turned frightening. Then, in a deep voice filled with menace, he said, Even a scoundrel like you had a conscience. Jineon looked at him and muttered, You've finally shown your true colors. I was trying to let you pass with dignity. Myung snarled, How foolish. Seeing the maids nearby, Myung thought grimly, Now there's no other way. If I must, I'll kill all the servants to silence them. He took out a poison needle and launched himself at Jineon. But before he could strike, Jineon threw a punch above his head, knocking him down. Don't get distracted while I'm eating, Jineon said, looking at Myung's fallen body. He thought to think I'm in this much pain, truly a pitiful body. This is I need to recover my strength quickly. Once I do, it won't matter if the mastermind behind this is the entire Yunha merchant group. When I return to the group, I'll have to investigate Myung. Suddenly he felt a sharp pain in his head. A headache struck him hard. Then memories began to flood his mind. Fragments from Lee Jineon's past. So that's what it was, he thought. Lee Jineon, the first son of the powerful Yunha merchant group, was neither as intelligent as his second brother nor as strong as his third. He was merely the lacking eldest son, trying to compensate with wealth. He had indulged in a depraved life of pleasure. By the time he tried to correct his ways, it was already too late. His health had deteriorated and he was exiled to this villa. If these memories are accurate, Jineon thought, then his main clan won't care about this place of exile. At first the problem was reincarnating without this body's memories, he continued, but now I can finally focus on martial arts. He looked down at his hands. He wasted such an innately gifted body. With my past life's knowledge and a few rare elixirs, I could reach a high level in no time. Then his gaze fell upon a chest full of money. All I have is money. There's nothing I can't afford, right? And so the seasons passed. 1 year later, a man approached a maid who was cleaning and greeted her politely. I have a letter for young Master Jineon, he said. Where may I find him? His name was Mok Insip, a guard from the Yunha merchant group. The maid pointed toward a man who was meditating calmly. Insip looked in that direction and was stunned by the sight. That person's physique was nothing like the sickly Jineon he had once known. Young Master Jineon, he thought, completely shocked. Jineon thought to himself, a few seasons have gone by. In that time my energy core manifested and I engraved all the martial arts necessary for survival onto this body. He recalled each one: the enlightened mobility art, the enlightened body art, the rapid stride, and the most powerful of them all, an art that allowed him to control lightning, the white lightning 10-phase art. So far he had reached the 4th phase. Everything has gone smoothly, he thought, but it's still not enough. Just then a voice called out to him, Young Master Jineon. It was Insip. He approached and respectfully greeted Jineon, introducing himself before saying, I've brought a letter from the main clan. Okay, let me see it, Jineon replied. As Insip looked at Genion, he thought to himself, what is this? Is he really the young master Genion I knew? Where did that frail weakling go? Noticing the large scroll in Insip's hand, Genion quipped, my arm's about to fall off. Before the two of them sat down at a nearby table. Genion opened the scroll and read through its contents. The letter stated that his father had collapsed and was now bedridden. No reason was given, only that the merchant group leader had fallen ill. Genion looked up and asked, it doesn't explain why he fell ill. That's most likely because of the Ouyang clan. Insip replied, as you know, our group has been paying tributes under the pretext of protection fees. Those payments have snowballed and are now unbearable, but has the Ouyang clan done anything to deserve raising those fees? Genion asked. Insip grew visibly frustrated. Nothing at all. Those dogs, even when the little deity sect tried to impose ridiculous trade taxes recently, the Ouyang clan just said, we only meet with the main clan of the Yunha merchant group if there's a serious issue, and did absolutely nothing. Our guard captain couldn't even protest. This is Ouyang who we're talking about. Genion's thoughts narrowed. Ouyang who? I've heard of him. He's well known in the Jianghu, strong enough for even someone like me to know of him. He must think merchant groups like ours are beneath him. A smirk crossed Genion's lips. So if I just deal with the Ouyang clan, everything gets resolved? He asked. Insip blinked. Deal with them. But he quickly added, there's another crucial reason behind your father's collapse. He explained that a sword fight had broken out between the second and third young masters. Their father had witnessed it and collapsed soon after. Don't tell me. Genion began, did he collapse from anger? Insip nodded. Genion looked visibly concerned. I can't believe they got into a sword fight in front of the merchant group leader, he muttered, seeing the worried expression on Genion's face. Insip tried to reassure him, don't worry, there will be no harm done to you because of this. Once this matter, I can't just sit back and watch, Genion interrupted. Rising from his chair, Insip looked at him, surprised and worried. You may keep the letter, Genion said. Determined, I'll go myself. Returning to the clan, Insip reported to the others, Genion has completely changed. He's become a perfect martial artist. His physique is incredible. One of the group members laughed, the infamous young master Genion. A martial artist, a red-haired man sneered, that good for nothing. Another man lying at a table joked, what is he suddenly a master of bedroom techniques now? If that scoundrel's a martial artist, then I must be a legendary martial master. Another scoffed. The red-haired man told Insip, come on, if you're going to joke, at least put some effort into it. Saying the vice captain has a lover is more believable. Before he could finish, a man approached and grabbed his head. It was Han Yip, the Yunha merchant group's squad vice captain. So young master Genion has really regained his health? Han Yip asked. He's always had a fine physique since childhood. He turned to Insip. Do you know when he plans to return? Frightened, Insip hesitated. I'm not sure. I only know that he's coming himself. Just then someone shouted from outside, young master Genion has arrived. Han Yip turned to leave the room. Let's go, we have to greet him. One of the men grumbled, do we really have to greet that good for nothing? Han Yip responded sternly, don't forget who feeds us. Stop whining and get moving. As Genion arrived, he was struck by the scale of the Yunha merchant group. I've only heard of them in stories. I can't believe they're actually this vast, he thought. Li Genion wasn't just moderately well off, he was practically born with a silver spoon. He turned to the two maids who had come with him. I'll go see father immediately, you two go ahead and rest. They nodded and left. Genion looked around. Why isn't a single person welcoming me? He wondered, but then he noticed a group standing nearby. Congratulations on your safe return, young master Genion. They greeted him in unison. Han Yip stepped forward, introducing himself as the guard squad's vice. You're almost unrecognizable. I'm relieved to see you looking healthy. Among the guards, the red-haired man muttered in disbelief. Vice Captain, do you have no pride? He always looked down on you, and yet you're just going to get mocked again. Genion offered a polite smile. This is quite the enthusiastic welcome for a troublemaker. Thank you, everyone. Everyone was stunned. He greeted us. That good for nothing actually greeted us. Insip whispered to the red-haired man beside him. I told you he's changed a lot. The man nodded, watching Genion walk away. He really has. I feel like I'm in the house of a stranger. Han Yip, leading the way to Genion's father's room, studied the young master beside him. He doesn't feel like an enemy but an ally. They soon arrived at the door. "I've already informed your father that you'd be visiting," Han Yip said. "Thank you," Jinian replied. Suddenly a mocking voice rang out from behind. "Well, would you look at this?" A hand landed on Jinian's shoulder. "If it isn't the perverted Jinian." It was Li Jian, the Yunhe merchant group's third son. Jinian said nothing. Jian sneered. "Your expression, you look like a completely different person." He leaned in, gripping Jinian's shoulder tightly. "You can even glare now." Han Yip's heart sank. "This is bad." Looks like he's about to get smacked again. Just after arriving, smiling awkwardly, Han Yip gently removed Jian's hand. "You two brothers have finally reunited after a long time. You must be thrilled to see each other again." Jian yanked his arm away, slapping Han Yip in the process. "What do you think you're doing touching me without permission?" he snapped. A red mark bloomed on Han Yip's face, but he said nothing. Jian sneered. As if dealing with this good-for-nothing wasn't enough, "Now even the vice-captain's looking down on me." He turned on Han Yip. "Should I teach you a lesson so you never look me in the eyes again?" Jinian slowly placed his hand on Jian's face and calmly said his name. Jian scowled. "What are you doing?" Before he could finish, Jinian's punch landed squarely on his face, sending him to his knees. Jian looked up in shock. Jinian gripped his shoulder tightly. "I was so excited on my way here," he said, his tone dark. Jian cursed in response. But Jinian leaned closer, his expression threatening. "You should be calling me big brother." After some time, a man with glasses and scrolls in his hand came out from the other side of the room. He noticed Han Yip and his squad members standing in front of his father's room with worried expressions on their faces. This man was Li Weian, the second son of the Yunhe merchant group and its current overseer. Approaching Han Yip, he asked what the commotion was about. Han Yip explained that there had been an argument between the first and third young masters. Hearing this, Weian immediately assumed that the third had harassed Jinian again and shouted at Han Yip and the others, scolding them for not stopping it. He rushed into the room to check on Jinian. Inside, however, he found a different scene. Jinian was pinching Jian's cheeks and whispering that they were right in front of their father's room, so he should stay quiet. As Jinian turned, he saw Weian entering, who was visibly shocked by the sight. Moments later, Weian sat in the chair near the table, sipping tea. While Jian remained kneeling, with a worried look, Weian mentioned that he had heard Jinian had returned and noted that he seemed to be in good health. Jinian replied that he was fine now, looking at Weian's injured hand. Jinian asked if the third brother had done that. Weian said it wasn't serious. Jinian suddenly raised his hand and gave Jian a hard slap across the face, in a threatening tone. He warned Jian never to raise a sword against his older brother if he didn't want another beating. Jian quickly agreed, frightened by Jinian's expression. Weian, too, was terrified by Jinian's demeanor. Jian, still kneeling with tears in his eyes, thought bitterly that Jinian had beaten him up, something unthinkable. Considering how weak he used to be, Weian silently observed Jian's crying face and thought to himself that Jinian had truly humbled him. Back then, the best Jinian could do was avoid getting beaten. Weian then asked Jinian if something had happened at the safe house, remarking that he seemed like a completely different person. Jinian replied with a calm smile, acknowledging that Weian had a good eye. He sat down and picked up the scrolls that Weian had brought, beginning to read them. Weian told him that the scroll contained a list of employees who were to attend the conference the next day. As Jinian scanned the names, he thought he had wanted to see who had recommended Myung, but realized that was no longer necessary. He noticed that the person who had recommended all the names, from the vice guard squad leader to the front gate guards, was Ouyang Hu. With a deep and threatening tone, Jinian addressed both of his brothers, demanding that if either of them was working with the Ouyang clan, they should admit it immediately. Both were startled by his expression. Weian, worried, asked if he truly believed that was a possibility. Jian, still kneeling, shouted that the idea was ridiculous and insisted he would rather die than let another clan take over their family business. Weian agreed, and Jian added that the Yunhe merchant group was a legacy their father had worked hard to build. Jinian nodded and said he was glad to hear that. Though he quietly thought to himself that perhaps he wouldn't need to kill them, he then asked Weian if all the higher-ups would be attending the conference tomorrow. Weian nodded in response. Jinian stated that in that case, he would be attending as well, and without another word headed into his Father's room, Waiyan, still worried, called out and asked where he was going. Jian simply replied that he was going to see their father. With a blank expression, Waiyan turned to Jian and asked what had happened at the safe house in frustration. Jian began pulling at his hair and muttered that he should have gone to Jinhua Mountain instead. Meanwhile, in the room, one of the attendants informed the merchant group leader that Jian was there to visit him. The leader, Li Xiangmin, told the man to let him in. As the physician standing nearby greeted Jian, Xiangmin smiled and said he was glad to see him. He asked Jian about the noise outside. Jian sat in the chair next to him and brushed it off as nothing. Jian mentioned that he had heard you were not been doing well due to stress. Xiangmin admitted that he had always been under stress, but now that his body was older, it couldn't handle it anymore. He gently touched Jian's face and said that he looked different now, and asked if he was really still Jian. He told Jian that he was glad to see him doing well. Jian, looking at him, thought to himself how strange it was. He had grown up without parents, so he didn't know what having a father felt like. But in Li Jinian's memories, his father had been a grand, formidable figure. Now, seeing his father's weakened body, he wondered when he had gotten so small. Holding his father's hand, Jinian assured him not to worry. He told him that they simply needed to eliminate the cause of his stress and that he would take care of it. Surprised, Xiangmin asked what he meant by eliminate. Jinian smiled darkly and replied that it was nothing and not to worry, but Xiangmin, seeing that smile, was suddenly filled with unease, wondering why his son was smiling like that. The next day, at the Yunhe Merchant Group's conference, a group of people gathered, among them Jian and Waiyan. One man with a smug expression stood out, Ouyang Hu, the guard squad leader of the Yunhe Merchant Group and a martial master of the Ouyang clan. A man seated behind him, noticing Jian, asked, "Isn't that the eldest son? What is he doing here?" Ouyang Hu, sitting down casually, replied that Jian was probably worried about his position in the group. As the meeting began, Waiyan read from the scroll in his hand and asked if anyone had a different opinion. Just as he was about to continue, Ouyang Hu interrupted by raising his hand. He remarked that the first young master still didn't have a personal guard since his return and he had someone he could recommend. Someone murmured quietly to the person next to him, expressing frustration that half of the Yunhe Merchant Group already consisted of people from the Ouyang clan. Wondering when Ouyang Hu would finally stop, just then a sharp needle shot out, shattering the glass in that man's hand. Horrified, the man looked up. Ouyang Hu simply responded that his hand had slipped. With a sharp look, he asked if anyone had any objections to his suggestion. The room remained silent until Jian stood up and declared that he had a complaint. Approaching Ouyang Hu, he said he had a suggestion too, to fire the guard squad leader Ouyang Hu. The room erupted in shock. A man from the Ouyang clan mockingly told Jian it must be a joke, while another with a smirk asked if he understood how much Ouyang Hu cared about the merchant group's security. Annoyed, Ouyang Hu arrogantly told Jian that he must have forgotten his place after being bedridden for so long and that such decisions weren't his to make. Jian tightened his fist. As aura emanated from it, he slammed it into the ground in front of Ouyang Hu, the force cracking the floor into pieces. With a deep, threatening voice, he told Ouyang Hu that he must have forgotten who he was dealing with. Glaring at him, Jian stated with finality, "The Yunhe Merchant Group belongs to me." Before entering the conference room, while walking toward it, Waiyan asked Jian, who was walking in front of him, if he was going to dismiss Guard Captain Ouyang Hu. Jian speculated aloud that this was the reason he was attending the General Assembly, adding honestly that they were just a merchant group and that the Ouyang clan was far beyond what they should be interfering with. Jian stopped, turned his head slightly, and asked Waiyan if he knew what happened when a martial artist of the Jianghu was underestimated. He stated that such people ensured the ones making assumptions got devoured. Then, pointing out the state of the Yunhe Merchant Group, Jian continued walking and told Waiyan that it was already being devoured. Waiyan reflected on Jinian's words. Realizing his brother was right, he looked toward the Ouyang clan's people and wondered when their numbers had swelled so greatly within their group. Noticing Waiyan's worried expression, Jian reassured him not to worry, and said that as his older brother, he would take care of things. In the present moment, Wan recalled that memory as he watched Jinian's actions and thought to himself, "Handle this. Is that what you meant, brother?" Jinian's bold actions provoked the Ouyang clan members. They drew their swords and shouted at him, demanding to know what kind of madness he was up to. Ouyang, who, alarmed, thought to himself that the troublemaker had finally lost his mind. Seeing the swords drawn, Han Yip stepped forward, sword in hand, and shouted at the Ouyang clan, calling them insolent and questioning how they dared draw swords against young Master Jinian. He also urged Jinian to step back for safety. Tension escalated as the Ouyang clan members and Han Yip's squad stood opposite each other with drawn swords. Observing this, Jinian spoke in a deep voice, stating it was truly insolent to raise a sword against one's employer. He insulted them, calling them little punks with a death wish. Turning to Ouyang, who, Jinian sarcastically said that perhaps he should consider this confrontation compensation for ruining his retirement plans. He accused Ouyang, who of having physician Myung assassinate him while he was away recuperating, and of having instigated conflict between his second and third brothers. With bad blood between siblings, Jinian pointed out, everything became easier to manipulate. He added that as a result of Ouyang whose schemes, his father had collapsed. Jinian coldly remarked that if Ouyang who had just swayed one of the sons, he could have taken over the Yunhe merchant group without lifting a finger. Laughing, Ouyang who dismissed the accusation as pure delusion, but Jinian stepped closer and stated that the very Myung who was supposed to kill him had instead died by his hand. Ouyang, who was visibly shaken by the revelation, Jinian explained that this was the moment Ouyang whose fate had begun to change. Ouyang, who asked in disbelief if Myung had really died by Jinian's hand, Jinian replied calmly that he had sent Myung off with a single strike. Turning away, Jinian remarked that if Ouyang who had truly wanted to devour a major merchant group, he should have worked harder. He added that he would also file claims for the damages caused. Enraged, Ouyang who charged at Jinian with killing intent, a powerful aura began to emanate from his hand as he shouted that Jinian must truly have a death wish. Jinian met the charge with a punch of his own. And when their fists collided, the energy blast forced everyone around to shield their faces. As the dust settled, Ouyang who stared in disbelief, lightning energy. He's learned martial arts. The two stepped back. One of the Ouyang clan members whispered to another, surprised that young Master Jinian had blocked the guard captain's strike. The other confirmed it. Stunned, Jinian mockingly asked Ouyang who if it was really appropriate to attack someone who had just finished recuperating. Then he added that perhaps it was acceptable, since this was an official duel, enraged by the taunt. Ouyang who declared loudly that with Jinian's consent and in front of the guard squad and Ouyang clan as witnesses, the duel would proceed officially. Everyone was shocked. Ouyang who asked Jinian if this was acceptable. Jinian, however, declined the official duel and demanded a life-or-death duel instead. Ouyang who, taking up his sword and approaching him, remarked that Jinian must have trained under an impressive sect, considering the level of skill he had attained in such a short time. He rushed at Jinian with killing intent, declaring that although Jinian had some skill, he lacked experience, and Ouyang would make sure he knew the difference. Jinian swiftly evaded the attack and prepared a punch with lightning energy behind him. He scornfully asked Ouyang who if he dared talk about experience and then delivered a powerful blow to his abdomen, shouting that Ouyang was 100 years too early to be making such claims. The punch sent Ouyang who flying with blood gushing from his mouth. He landed hard and thought in horror, "What is this strength?" Jinian told him coldly that he would now demonstrate what real experience looked like. He rushed forward using the enlightened mobility art. Ouyang who barely managed to block with his sword but was pushed back. An intense battle ensued between them. Ouyang who, feeling overwhelmed, thought something was clearly off. This didn't feel like someone who had just learned martial arts. It felt like facing a seasoned martial master, having no other option. Ouyang who poured his aura into his sword. His clan members were stunned. He unleashed the three-form sword art at Genion, but Genion evaded it using rapid stride and landed a solid punch on his chin, sending him flying again. Everyone, Huayan, Han Yip, the maids were stunned. Even Xiongmin and his physician, watching from the side of the building, were shocked. The physician asked Xiongmin what that was. Xiongmin simply replied, "My son appears to have learned martial arts." Inside the conference room, Ouyang, who lay collapsed on the floor, blood spilling from his mouth. Ouyang clan members rushed to their captain's lifeless body. One of them, holding him in his arms, glared at Genion with frustration. Genion, unfazed, asked him if he wanted to die as well. Another member stopped the man holding Ouyang, who addressed the Yunhe merchant group, testifying that young Master Jinion's duel had no irregularities. However, he warned that from now on, if the Ouyang clan continued seeking revenge through duels, the Yunhe merchant group would not be able to avoid them. Everyone was horrified at the implication. Genion calmly stated that he never expected to live free of grudges. Gazing at the crowd, he declared that if kindness was shown, he would repay it, and if a grudge was held, he would repay that as well. He added that if anyone had a problem with that, he alone would take responsibility, not the Yunhe merchant group. Worried, Huayan told him that such a declaration was too dangerous. But Genion turned and firmly addressed everyone, saying that the Yunhe merchant group was his. It belonged to his father, to the guard squad who welcomed back a discarded young master at dawn, and even to the stable hands who took joy in simply watching him eat. With a firm voice, he told the Ouyang clan that the Yunhe merchant group had no intention of being toyed with by scum like them. If they understood, he told them to leave. They were all fired. The Yunhe members were surprised and overjoyed at Jinion's actions, while the Ouyang clan members, frustrated and defeated, left the premises. One of them bitterly wished Genion luck as they departed. Insip, who had been holding back, finally blurted out to everyone that young Master Genion had really won. Before he could say more, Han Yip clamped his hand over his mouth. Another guard nearby scolded him, saying they shouldn't celebrate yet and that they should be ashamed for standing by as guards and doing nothing. Genion then called Huayan, addressing him as chief administrator, and requested that he buy him an elixir. He said that since he claimed responsibility, he should at least be granted that much support. Huayan, smiling, agreed and promised to prepare the best quality tonic. Genion added that with the elixir and the need to hire new guards, Huayan would be very busy from now on. He concluded by saying he already had some people in mind for the guard squad. A few days earlier, on Jinion's first day of joining the Yunhe merchant group, Han Yip was guiding him through the premises. As they walked, Genion noticed something and asked Han Yip if he had eaten yet. Han Yip replied that he hadn't. Explaining he had been working since dawn, Genion acknowledged it and noticed members of the Ouyang clan lounging and enjoying a meal together. Genion thought to himself how ironic it was. Some people didn't even have time to eat because of work, while others idled during work hours, eating and laughing. He observed them and thought bitterly that they must have it easy, leeching off other people's efforts. He concluded internally that such people needed to be rooted out. Sensing Jinion's anger, Han Yip began to worry silently. However, Jinion's thoughts shifted. The real issue, he realized, was that he needed someone to fill the roles left behind if he removed them. This line of thought led him to a particular den, a place known for gamblers and heavy drinkers. The air was loud and rowdy, filled with chatter and clinking drinks. As Genion entered the den, one man looked up from his drink and whispered to his friend, trying to confirm if the person entering was who he thought it was. His friend asked who he meant, and the man told him to look closely. It was the young master of the Yunhe merchant group. Murmurs spread rapidly through the crowd. Someone said they thought he had died since he hadn't been seen around the inn for a long time. Another commented that they were curious to see how much money he'd throw away this time. Genion approached a guarded room where a fat man stood watch. Upon seeing Genion, the guard greeted him with sarcastic enthusiasm. pretending to be surprised and called him young master, asking if he had returned to being a sucker, and then quickly corrected himself to ask if Jian had come to make another generous donation as the guard reached out toward him. Jian coldly told him not to touch him, warning that he might get covered in pig grease. The guard scowled, irritated by the insult, but eventually allowed him into the room. Inside, a man sat flanked by 2 large bodyguards. Upon seeing Jian, he commented that Jian looked better and joked that recovery had clearly worked well. This man was Chul Myungo, known as the Poisonous Fox. The 2 large men beside him were the Yuk twins, Yuk Jinbo and Yuk Myungo. Myungo addressed the twins, scolding them for being heartless. He reminded them that Jian had been sick and just recovered, and at the very least, they could have asked how he was doing. The twins apologized, claiming they hadn't known. Myungo reiterated that Jian was his friend and deserved more concern. Hearing the word friend stirred a memory in Jian. He recalled their childhood friendship, if it could be called that, one marked by one-sided violence and financial exploitation. He thought to himself that the modern definition of friendship must have changed. Myungo tossed a pouch of coins in front of Jian, suggesting that he should enjoy himself now that he was back. He assumed Jian must be craving the auction after all the time spent recuperating, despite smiling outwardly. Myungo was thinking to himself how much he had missed having a pushover to squeeze money from. He announced loudly that he would treat Jian to something extravagant to celebrate the return of the Yunha merchant group's young master. Noticing Jinian's silence, Myungo arrogantly asked why he was so quiet and if he was trying to piss him off. Jian calmly replied that he was thinking. When Myungo asked what he was thinking about, Jian, with sharp eyes and a dangerous aura, considered whether or not to kill him. Jian evaluated the situation. What he needed wasn't Chul Myungo, he needed the twins. They were the ones doing all the actual work. In his eyes, they were too valuable to remain under Myungo's thumb. Jian announced that he had made a decision, but Myungo ignored him and kept talking to the twins. Jian repeated himself and told Myungo to hand over the vault key. His demand shocked not only Myungo but also the twins, feigning ignorance. Myungo asked what he was talking about and if Jian wanted money. Jian replied that he did. For now, cash would suffice. He laid out his reasoning: the thousands of niang he had been forced to invest in the gambling den, the interest, the extorted money, and his medical bills from all the beatings. He estimated that 100,000 niang would be fair compensation. Myungo burst into laughter and sarcastically asked if Jian had studied arithmetic during his recovery, but then his expression darkened. He pointed behind him toward the vault and angrily told Jian that the vault didn't just contain money, it also had jewelry, gold, and silver. He stepped closer and warned Jian that there was nothing in that vault for him. Jian remained silent. Myungo, visibly agitated, offered to lend him money directly if that's what he needed and demanded to know why he was asking for the vault key. Still, Jian didn't respond. Myungo placed a hand on Jinian's shoulder and, with a maniacal grin, accused him of ignoring him. He yelled at Jian, calling him delusional for acting so tough just because he had recovered. He demanded that Jian get a grip and shouted, "Do you know who I am? I'm Chul Myungo." Still, Jian didn't flinch. Myungo clapped in front of his face and barked at him, asking if he had a death wish. Enraged, he ordered the twins to pin Jian down, thinking a beating would bring him back to his senses. The twins nodded and moved in. Yuk Jinbo tried to grab Jian by the neck, but Jian, with a composed expression, said I had even gone through the trouble of showing them kindness. Then, grabbing Jinbo's arm, he flung him aside with great force. Yuk Myungo rushed in to punch Jian, but Jian dodged the attack, planted his hands on the ground, and delivered a powerful double kick to Yuk's leg, breaking it and sending him crashing down. Jian looked at them with some surprise. They still stood back up, even with shattered wrists and ankles. There wasn't a hint of fear in their eyes. Jian smirked. They were the real deal. The twins attacked together, but Jian suddenly vanished from their sight. Bewildered, they looked around, wondering where he had gone. Jian was already behind them, placing his hands on their Heads, he told them that they were far too valuable to let rot away. Then, with one swift move, he smashed their heads together, rendering them unconscious. He turned his gaze to Myungo with a slight smile. He said, "All that's left now is you, my dear friend Myungo." Myungo grew worried upon seeing the unconscious bodies of the twins. He turned to Jineon and thought with frustration that if Jineon had spent his recovery time training in martial arts instead of studying arithmetic, he might have been able to respond properly. Jineon, unfazed, asked him calmly what was going on, noting that Myungo was usually quick to catch on, but Myungo suddenly shouted at him, warning him not to come any closer and insisting they talk things out. Despite the warning, Jineon advanced steadily. Myungo grew more anxious and questioned himself internally. Why am I scared? It's just that pushover. Jineon. In a moment of panic, Myungo lunged forward with a knife in hand, yelling that the first strike always wins. But Jineon reacted swiftly, kicking a nearby table directly into Myungo's face. The impact shattered the table, and Jineon followed it up with a solid punch. He then pinned Myungo down, placed a hand on his head, and unleashed a surge of lightning energy into him. A nearby guard watching the scene thought grimly that someone might actually get killed today. The lightning sent Myungo trembling to the floor. As Jineon approached again, he called out for him to snap out of it. Myungo weakly raised his head and claimed he was fine, but internally he was reeling. What the hell did this guy do while recovering? Did he fake it all and train in secret? Did he go through all that just to take revenge? But I didn't even do that much. Haunted by memories of his own past misdeeds, Myungo cursed under his breath. He realized then Jineon was indeed out for revenge. Forcing a smile, Myungo stood up and asked Jineon if he wanted anything else besides the key. Before Jineon could misunderstand, Myungo quickly added that he was just asking because they had been friends since childhood, emphasizing their special bond. Seeing no change in Jineon's expression, Myungo grew desperate. He reminded him what friends were for, then suddenly hugged him and said he was upset too. He promised never to beat Jineon up or extort him again, declaring that they were brothers now. Turning to the twins who had regained consciousness, he instructed them to treat Jineon with the respect due to an elder brother and congratulated him on his advancement. The twins complied and congratulated Jineon respectfully. Myungo turned away with a wicked smile, thinking to himself that things had escalated from being just friends to brothers far too easily. Looking at Jineon, he scoffed internally at how easily the man could be swayed by a little false affection. Just wait, he thought, once I get out of this mess, I'll take the twins with me. With just the three of us, starting over somewhere else will be easy. But before he could take another step, Jineon called out to the twins by name and asked if they were ready to accept him as their sworn brother for life. The twins looked at Myungo without responding. Myungo noticed their hesitation and asked them why they were looking at him like that. They were brothers now, weren't they? After a moment of silence, the twins turned to Jineon and affirmed that they would now serve him as their elder brother. Myungo managed to smile, but Jineon responded with a smug grin of his own. He then stated that since they were now brothers, they had to decide who the eldest brother would be. He asked the twins to wait outside while the matter was settled between him and Myungo. Shocked, Myungo could only watch as the twins quietly left the room. Alone now, Jineon asked Myungo what he was really trying to do. Myungo, realizing what was coming, grew increasingly anxious. Jineon told him to decide quickly. Myungo began to understand. It wasn't about money. Jineon remarked that Myungo had taken advantage of those naive kids, saying that wasn't how a person should act. He smiled and declared that from now on he would lead and train the twins properly. Myungo lowered his head and offered Jineon all his money instead. With a crooked smile, he covered his face with his hands and accused Jineon of beating him out of nowhere and now taking the twins too. He shouted in despair, asking if Jineon expected him to go out and get beaten to death. Then he screamed, telling Jineon to just kill him already. Jineon asked if that was truly what he wanted and landed a brutal kick to Myungo's chin, sending blood spraying from his mouth. With cold finality, he told Myungo he had done well, then began punching him repeatedly. Each blow crackled with lightning. Myungo, feeling his life slipping away, thought desperately that this might be the end for him. As Jineon continued his barrage, Myungo began to murmur something. Jineon paused, leaned in and asked what he was saying. Barely audible, Myungo whispered that he would hand over the key, just please not to kill him. Jineon smiled and asked if that was really how someone begged for their life. Myungo, now frustrated, asked sarcastically if he was supposed to beg politely just because they were friends. Disgusted by his arrogance, Jineon tossed him aside. Looking down at Myungo, he thought to himself how ridiculous it all was. Myungo was clearly out of his mind. The twins approached the fallen Myungo and asked if he had lost. Myungo admitted that he had. He instructed them to serve Jineon as their new elder brother. As he lay there, shame and sorrow overwhelmed him. He had grown attached to the twins who had followed him so loyally until now. Tears welled up in his eyes. The twins bowed to him and thanked him for everything. Then they followed Jineon out. Myungo slowly rose and left the room, cursing under his breath. Damn heartless bald bastards. He muttered, they say never take in beasts with black hair. The ancestors were never wrong. Inside the gambling den, the other men noticed Myungo and whispered among themselves. One asked if that was the infamous zombie Myungo. Another noted the twins were no longer with him. Someone suggested that if the twins were gone, they might finally have a chance to take him down. The crowd surrounded him. Sensing the tension, Myungo shouted at them in defiance. The men charged at him, fists raised. As Myungo's trembling hand reached out, he cursed Jineon under his breath, wishing the man had gone a bit easier on him. Then, just as the attack was about to land, a sudden punch flashed through the air, knocking the assailants back. It was Jineon. He glared at the mob and scolded them. He reminded them that they had never even dared to look Myungo in the eye before, yet now they jumped him just because he had lost everything. If you want to kill him, Jineon growled. Come at me while I'm still standing. You punks have no damn honor. Ashamed and afraid, the attackers retreated. Myungo left along with them. The twins, carrying their belongings, followed behind Jineon. They bowed respectfully and thanked him for sparing Myungo. Jineon looked at them thoughtfully. He remembered how everyone at the gambling den had always wondered why the twins stuck by Myungo. Some said they were slaves, others believed they followed him out of fear. Even Jineon had once thought so. But now he realized they weren't slaves and they weren't afraid. Even in a second life, Jineon thought, understanding people's hearts was no easy task. At a distance, a man watching from the corner looked at Jineon and the twins with disbelief and asked himself, is that really Jineon? And so, the twins officially joined the Yunha merchant group. At the Galaxy Merchant Guild, Jian was walking through the courtyard, deep in thought. Ever since Jineon returned, not a single day had passed in peace. Just the other day, he brought back a ton of money out of nowhere. And now he was dragging in two large men. With a frustrated look on his face, Jian muttered to himself, I really don't like him. Suddenly, he heard the sound of a carriage. He turned toward it and thought, what now? It was Insip, arriving in a carriage filled with elixirs. Shortly after, Wyon appeared and began checking them carefully. Jian, upon seeing the contents, approached Wyon and asked, what is all this? Wyon, clearly recognizing the value of the items, replied with joy, explaining that these were rare elixirs. So rare that people would line up at dawn just to get their hands on them. Just as Wyon tried to explain further, a voice interrupted. I ordered them. They all turned toward the source of the voice. It was their father, Seongmin, walking toward them with the support of Han Yip. Seeing him, Wyon immediately rushed forward. Father, going outside is still too much for your health. Seongmin reassured his second son. I'm fine. I'm feeling much better. Smiling brightly with shiny eyes, Wyon asked, Father, what are you going to do with all these elixirs? He thought to himself, that Jineon brat only asked for one. But father bought so many. There must be some for me too, right? But Seongmin replied firmly, they're all for your brother. Jian's heart sank. His thoughts shattered in an instant. Pointing at the elixirs, he asked, for big brother, all of this? Seongmin nodded. That's right, you think just one elixir is enough to change our fate? Considering how much we've spent on the Gu family and the lesser immortal sect, this isn't even a huge expense. I've also sent letters to the heads of our regional branches, old friends, and respected great merchants, telling them that we're purchasing high-quality elixirs in bulk to overcome our company's crisis. With a sigh, Seongmin added, If our company falls, they'll suffer too. So they'll take it seriously. He admitted, bringing Gu Yonghu in as captain of the escort was my mistake. I need to at least clean that up. Hearing this, Han Yip said, that's a wise decision. The young master is sure to become a great warrior. Xiangmin nodded and thanked him. I'll be counting on your support. As Jian tried to say something, no one listened. Xiangmin, wearing a confident smile, declared, this is great, what a perfect opportunity. I finally get to blow through all the money I've saved up my whole life. Hearing that, Jian's expression went blank. What about me? He demanded, what about my elixir? Xiangmin looked at him with doubt. Do you even need one? Later, at the training ground, Jian was venting his frustration. He struck everything around him while muttering, wherever I go, it's always Jian. Why does he get an elixir and I don't, you bastards? Are you discriminating against me? He paused for a moment and thought, what kind of miraculous encounter did that guy even have? Without noticing, something large was approaching from behind at high speed. When Jian turned to see what it was, he saw Jian speeding toward him with a massive rock strapped to his back. I'm out for a walk, Jian announced. Jian was shocked. A walk, he thought. Then, watching him, he muttered, that Yunbal guy is really putting in the work. Lying down on the ground and staring at the wooden sword in his hand, Jian thought, at this rate. Suddenly, he recalled when Gu Yonghu made a lunge with his sword. He stood up and resumed training even harder, determined to surpass Gu Yonghu. He remembered the moment Jian used his fist to defeat Gu Yonghu and thought, even after all my hard training, it just doesn't feel like I'm getting close. Just then, someone spoke behind him. What's with you? He turned and froze. It was Jian. Startled, Jian started to curse him but immediately backed down, asking nervously, brother, why are you here? Weren't you on a walk? I'm done, Jian replied. If you're going to critique, at least do it right. He handed the wooden sword back to Jian. Try replicating it with your sword. You copied Gu Yonghu's final move pretty well. Jian's frustration rose. Wow, he was watching the whole time again, he thought. He got up and attempted the move again. This time, it looked sharper. Jian observed and commented. That's how sloppy Gu Yonghu's stab was. Annoyed, Jian snapped, what? Even the way you talk. Before he could finish, a punch landed on him. It was Jian again. You let your guard down, he said, vanishing and reappearing behind Jian once I closed the distance. He struck again. You panicked and just kept defending. Seeing the next attack coming, Jian dodged it and screamed internally. This psycho, what's wrong with him? He shouted, wait, brother, can't we just talk? But Jian didn't respond. He just kept moving forward. Jian grabbed his sword and thought, screw it, whatever happens, happens. He rushed forward with a swing, only to realize Jian wasn't there. He disappeared. No, he was behind him again, preparing another punch. When people lose control and get backed into a corner, Jian said, they tend to pull out their best trump card. Jian immediately turned around and tried to block. Jian's punch stopped just inches from his face. Trembling, Jian collapsed. I almost died just now, Jian explained. Stabbing has a lower hit rate than slashing, plus Gu Yonghu's move, the threefold transformation sword, was a one-strike kill technique. He had no choice but to be cautious with his thrust. If I can move faster than that split second, the outcome's already decided. Honestly, Jian thought, the me from my past life wouldn't have even given someone like Gu Yonghu time to draw his sword. My current body doesn't even have half the strength I did in my Fist King days. There's no way I can be satisfied with defeating someone like Gu Yonghu, but even I, the Fist King, failed to surpass some people. This won't do. I have to become stronger than ever before, beyond comparison. While he was lost in thought, a maid approached and informed him, young master, you have a visitor. Jian nodded. Understood. I'll be right there. He flicked Jian lightly on the head before leaving. What was that? Jian grumbled. Meanwhile, inside the house, a group of young men were talking. Seriously, knock it off, said one of them. Don't say stupid crap like that. The other replied, you really think Jian knows martial arts? One asked. That guy only cared about girls. There's no way he's some fighter. Gu Wong spoke up. You think I believe it? I saw it with my own eyes. He continued, I was drunk the other night, passing by Cheol Myungo's gambling den. I heard Jinian's voice talking with twins, but then I puked, and when I looked again, he was gone. His friend Ju Jaryong shook his head. That's why nobody believes you. The third friend, Samaguk, cut in. Cut it out already. Isn't that why we came here? To see him for ourselves? They entered Jinian's room, to see our young master, still the same as ever. But the three of them froze in shock. Jinian was inside, with the twins. They quickly stepped back and closed the door. Gook, frightened, asked the nearby maid, "That's really your young master? You sure he's not some new adoptee the Lord brought in?" The maid nodded. "He's definitely our young master." Gook turned to Jaryong. "Did I drink too much last night? Am I seeing things?" "No," Jaryong replied, "so I really did see him. That was too much. He was so indifferent." He muttered to himself, "That really is Li Jinian, the one and only of the four pillars of our branch." While the three continued whispering among themselves, the door to Jinian's room opened slowly. He stepped out. "Take the twins to the common dining hall," he instructed the maid. "They'll eat a lot, so give them the big dishes." The maid nodded and left with the twins. As Woong and Gook tried to sneak away, Jinian called out in a firm voice, "What are you waiting for? Come in." The three of them trembled in fear. "Someone save us," they all thought.